Whitney Miller, how is Monday going?
Oh, it's going, every day is a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday, every day now. So same.
I try to repeatedly in every episode now say what day it is to remind
It's a
people.
good idea.
Because it's the only reason I know. Let's talk about how you got here first. With all that you've done in your career, how did you decide becoming a relationship coach was the next move for you?
Yeah, it's something that I've always been interested in doing. And I've always found like human relationships really interesting. And it's the one thing that we either are always trying to find a relationship or get out of a relationship or better our relationship. And if we're not in one, we're constantly thinking about it too. So it's always on someone's mind. And yeah, I mean, when I look back at my life, I always look back and I feel like I've lived different lives all in one, because I look back to even in high school when I was competing in a bunch of sports. I was a big athlete and still am, and then went into pageants and I had that whole, chapter of my life. And then from there I went into fighting and had that whole chapter, and was a commentator for Glory Kickboxing. And, simultaneously throughout that time, I was in a long-term open relationship with Aubrey Marcus, and we were constantly being hit up for relationship advice. Like, how do you do this? What comes up? What about jealousy? All of these things. And so I found myself really diving into it and being interested in that. And I just knew that was the next step for me. And interestingly enough, I was interviewing the world champion at Madison Square Garden live on ESPN, which was like my jam, right? It's like the pinnacle of where I could be. And I just had this voice, basically, it's a message or whatever you want to call it, that said, why are you telling his story when you have a story to tell? And I knew at that moment that I was going to have to quit what my dream job at the time was, working for Glory, and just go head first into it. And that was like terrifying for me. And I cried a bunch over it because but I just knew it was what I had to do.
When was that you made that shift? When was that moment?
It was about 2.5 years ago.
Okay, cool. And then, okay, so when people ask you, what is a relationship coach? Like, what does being a relationship coach entail? Like, how do you kind of explain what it is you do?
Yeah, it's, any way that I can help improve or give a different perspective to relationships for people. So, I mean, I coach anyone who's in monogamous relationships, open relationships, poly, single, the whole thing. But it's funny because a lot of our issues or questions are very, very similar. And a lot of the times we just need someone to help us guide us through that, because we can become so blinded, with our own thoughts and our own perceptions and insecurities and fears. Sometimes you just need someone to come in and be like, yo, but you're not really looking at this side either.
Sure. You spent years advocating for like open and non-traditional relationships. So how upsetting was it to see Joe Exotic tear all that down in a matter of weeks? You watched Tiger King, right?
I only watched part of it. I know everyone's obsessed with this show, but I could not get into it. Like, what? I was like, okay, I can understand that it's so mind-blowing and that these characters that are, it's worth watching just solely for that. But I couldn't just really totally get on board, because I knew he was married to 2 men, right?
Yeah. He had I think 3 husbands at one point.
Ugh, that's busy. I will tell you that much. Okay. That takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy.
That's one of the questions I have about, well, and we'll get to this, but about the open relationship sort of situation is like, one relationship is a lot of energy and can be very exhausting, as many of us know. Seeming to get, it's like, because it's more than one relationship when you're carrying on a relationship with more than one person. That's a lot to manage, like feelings and emotions and day-to-day, like time-wise, right?
Oh yeah, no question. And I mean, when it comes to an open relationship, I mean, there's plenty of different ways on how you can build that open relationship. I think everyone's coming up with their own version of monogamy, their own version of open, their own version of poly anyway. And so that's what really open is. But yeah, when you do have other relationships, you have other feelings, you have other emotions, you have to talk about absolutely everything. Like most of the time when it comes to an open relationship, you're more so talking about all of the things that may or could or would happen instead of actually practicing them. And yes, there is the practice portion of it too, but I'm telling you, you're analyzing and deep diving into all of the emotions that are coming up between you and whoever else is involved.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's just, God, that's a lot to wrap. That's a lot to wrap your head around.
It's like having another job. So if you don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to, you don't have that extra energy, it's going to be very, very challenging to be in an unconventional relationship because you just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Honestly, it's one of the things that like, I kind of explained this to you off mic, but like I just went through a divorce and I'm also in the process of building a company at the same time. You say it's like having another job. I noticed sort of the back end of my marriage when I was having to launch my company and shit was like kind of falling apart, relationship wise. And I started to notice all the parallels between managing a company and managing a relationship, and where I was doing a good job of some things in the relationship, I could mirror that with the company. And it was very strange to see all the parallels. So it really is like, you can look at a relationship like, do I have the capacity to add another job to my plate right now? And if the answer is no, you might not have the capacity to add another relationship either.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's a good way to look at it too. It's just how much energy are you willing to put into your interpersonal relationships if you're spread thin already. Like growing a business in and of itself is like having a child, right? So that's going to take a lot of your time. And that doesn't mean not to get into a relationship. It's just becoming aware of the fact that it's going to take a lot of energy on your end.
Oh, I'm very fucking aware. Okay, because everyone knows I know everything there is to know about sex and relationships, and that I've never had any issues in my personal life whatsoever. I opened the floor.
None of us have. What do you mean?
No, not at all. But I opened the floor on social media for our listeners to ask questions for you, Whitney. So let's get into some of those if you're down.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Almost all these people explicitly asked to like remain anonymous, obviously, so we're just going to leave them nameless. First question is, how does an open relationship work? I find myself getting jealous when my boyfriend even talks to other girls, and I feel like I would murder him. And we've got a lot of questions about open relationships, shockingly. So this is like another version of this. It's the same question. And I'll just let you wrap them up together. How would I go about asking my long-term girlfriend if she'd be interested in exploring an open relationship? Because I think that seems very unrealistic to a lot of people, right? That they could ever even like, oh yeah, sure. Your response.
Yeah. So when you're talking about open relationships, obviously it can be a very vulnerable and triggering conversation because it goes against all of what we've been conditioned to believe about relationships. So I want to first start with the second one. If you're interested in talking to your partner, exploring this topic, that's all it is. It's just exploring the topic. Blame it on me if you want. Like, that's what I tell people is if you listen to my podcast and you hear us talking about open relationships, one way to bring it up is like, hey, I was listening to Whitney's podcast. This is what they were kind of talking about. Like, what do you think about that? Or there's great books out there. One of the first books that I read from a good friend of mine was Sex at Dawn by Dr. Chris Ryan. Kind of goes into monogamy and how, humans have adapted to that over time. And so if you guys can talk about this topic without the pressure of practicing it, I would say that's the best way to go, because you don't want to be like, hey, I want to be in an open relationship and there's this chick that I really want to have sex with. Like, that's not going to go over well. Okay. There's like pacing and calibration to this. So just take your time and let's talk about this on an intellectual level without actually going and doing it right at this moment. And then for, even imagining being in an open relationship because of jealousy. Look, I was extremely jealous. Like, I was the crazy girlfriend, like looking through the house for hair follicles. And like, if there was one time the shampoo bottle was moved into a different, bathroom, and I was like, for sure somebody was in here and taking a shower. Who is she? You know, like that was me for my entire life. So when people say they're too jealous to be in an open relationship, I'm like, you can do it if you actually want it.
But were
really
you still that way when y'all started, or was it something that you removed through the process of being in one?
I removed through the process of being in one. Yeah.
Damn. So the beginning must have been fucked up.
It was a shit show. It was a complete shit show. And we also had no idea what we were doing. We were just trying it out. We had no one really in our community who was practicing this either. So we're going blindly and just not doing a very good job of it, but trying. And really for me, I think one point that I want to make is jealousy is totally normal to have, you guys. Everyone thinks that you shouldn't be jealous. You shouldn't feel this way. It's terrible. You have shame around being jealous when it's like, no. Jealousy is going to come up. It's just asking yourself, why am I getting jealous? Like, where is this jealousy coming from? What is it triggering in me?
Managing it healthily.
Right.
Rather than letting it become a toxic thing that poisons you in your relationship.
Mm-hmm. And letting that dictate all of your actions, right? When we can be jealous, but if you take a moment to say like, okay, why am I being jealous here? Most of the time, it's not actually what your partner is doing, like the actions of him or her. It's calling out something within you that you maybe haven't looked at yet.
Sure. Next question is, what is the definition? Like, how do you define a healthy sex life?
Well, I mean, that's going to change between person to person and couple to couple. And so I would say, first and foremost, a healthy sex life is where both of you guys are interested in each other's needs, wants, and desires, are open to trying new things together, and can really communicate. Because a friend of mine says communication is lubrication. So like if you can have these conversations about what you really want, and have your partner not be threatened by it, then I think you can build whatever sex life that you want.
That seems to be like the thing I encounter the most, because similarly to how you said the reason you first started getting into relationship counseling, being a relationship coach, because you and Aubrey kept getting all these questions. It's funny, just like I think that happens naturally with anyone who has any kind of audience. You just start to get questions about your relationships as people learn about you and your relationships.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's come up the most is like,
sex life.
Yeah. And communication specifically, like it seems like the biggest problem for people, particularly with sex, is that they're afraid to talk about it with each other. There's like there's a barrier there. And I don't know if that's that shame or it's like, it's just the way for some people, it's the way they were raised to look at sex. It's just the way that it's framed up in their head, where it's like, it's a scary thing to approach, even with the person you find yourself most comfortable with in the entire world, which is a very weird dynamic.
Right. And this is the person that you love. You're probably the closest with this person, but you will talk about it with everyone else other than your partner, which is like a really interesting thing to do. And so when talking about having a, great sex life, or what are the things that you want to do, a couple of recommendations would be like, focus on what you really want. Like, I really want to try this. Is something that I'm interested in, and not pointing at your partner to say like, oh, you're doing this completely wrong. Right? So they get defensive. That's where it can be vulnerable. You want to do this like in a gentle way. Another way is to ask like, hey, how can I be the best lover that you've ever had? Or how can I give you the best pleasure? How can I be the best whatever? So it kind of opens the door for them. Ooh, something that you did recently that I really liked was X, Y, and Z, or something that I've never tried, but I would love to try with you is X, Y, and Z.
And I would say like repeat, like a part of that is like repetition, right? Because the first time you ask, you may not get much of a response. It might be something like it takes her or him time to get a little more comfortable talking about shit like that. But the next time you ask, you might get a better response. And the next time you like give them, because it'll give them time to think about that question too. The fact that you're even asking it is a huge step forward in the first place, and like gives them motivation. So it's like this give and take to it. But I can't get over how silly and simple the fix with most stuff, just having better communication, just being more open to talking to your person will fix so much shit. But it's the thing that we're all too scared to do. And like you said, it's so funny because like you'll group text with your friends all day about your sex life.
Yeah.
You won't say shit to your person. It's like, what the fuck is that? That's so fucking bizarre.
Right. You will talk about your sex life to everybody else, but the one person you're having sex with, you won't talk about it with. It's like,
Insane.
you're not going to get anywhere with that.
Humans, what the hell are we doing?
I know. Let's go. But I think really communication, people hit me up all the time. How can I get this? How can I, convince my partner this? How can I say these things? It's like, I can't give you a magic pill. I can give you a formula, but you're going to have to put the formula in place. Like, you're still going to have to use your words and talk about it. And yeah, it may get a little crunchy. There may be a little bit of an, argument or whatever, but it's usually because the other person is feeling a little like threatened and, oh my God, does this mean my relationship is changing? Instead of like, this is for the betterment of our relationship because I love you so much. I want us to have the best relationship that we possibly can have.
Right, which will click for anybody that you want to be in a relationship with. Like, if that doesn't click, then that's a big red flag where you're like, okay, this is probably not going to be great. So it's like a huge way to kind of see if what you're in is even worth it long term. Like, if that person's even going to be worth like investing in, because if they're not into like being open with you when it comes to your sex life, you're going to have a lot of trouble. You're going to struggle.
Yeah. I mean, being in a relationship with somebody who's not interested in hearing what you have to say is a huge red flag.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah. And then same for you. If you're the person who has a really hard time communicating, because a lot of people have a hard time communicating.
Oh, most of us.
Most of us, yeah. And it's just like, okay, what is it about me saying what I want that I'm afraid of? Am I afraid of that he's not going to love me or she's not going to love me anymore? Am I not worthy of some of these things? So it goes deep. Like, you just being afraid of communicating something to someone isn't the fact that you're just afraid of that. There's something deeper. Like, why are you not saying what you really want?
And you have to think about that shit to get down to the core of it so that you can even understand within yourself before you can start asking questions to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'm 3 years into a relationship with my girlfriend, and we've kind of, in quotes here, lost the fire, end quote. How do we reignite it?
I'm assuming he's meaning kind of the sexual desire has waned off.
I think for guys, typically what this means is they're not having sex as frequently as they were, and they're not sure what that means or how to fix it.
Okay, yeah. So this is absolutely very, very common. So I don't want them to feel like it's only them and no one else is experiencing this.
I think every relationship, right? At some point you experience a point where you're sort of figuring out your sex life and you're like, wait a minute. 2 months ago, we were having sex every day. Now we're having sex 3 times a week. What the fuck does that mean?
Yep, exactly. And there's been studies that show, I don't know who maybe has higher sex drive within their relationship, but there's been studies that show that after between 1 to 3 years, women's sexual desire in long-term relationship plummets faster than men actually. So they're kind of, yeah.
Oh,
so
great.
Yeah, so it is, and it's very normal to have this, and a lot of women feel broken when they hear that, or when they're feeling like, oh my God, I'm not attracted, I don't want to have sex with my partner. I'm really attracted to him, but I don't want to have sex with him. What's wrong with me?
Right.
Just know that the science is out there, that it's totally normal, and there's ways of going around it. The thing is that once we get into a relationship, a long-term relationship, we say what we really want at the beginning a lot of the times, and then we don't say anything. We just expect it to kind of work
and happen.
And it's going to be spontaneous, and we don't have to talk about these things. It's like, no, you have to talk about it, use the tools. So a lot of the times you can do something simple like adrenaline inducing activities. So anything that like spikes your adrenaline together, that kind of pushes you outside of your comfort zone, bring couples closer and increase sexual desire between each other. So anything that's a little bit overcoming a fear together. Does that make sense?
It could be something silly as fuck too, like going rock climbing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Rock climbing, skydiving, whatever it is. The other side is when we do talk about relationships, my co-host on my podcast, Dr. Wednesday Martin, wrote about this in her book and they're made of kind of a joke about it. Like, if you want to stay together with your boyfriend or girlfriend, don't move in or move out. And so like having your own space in your own time and not watching your partner poop or, your beard hair is everywhere, or maybe for women, it's like tampons. I don't know, whatever it is.
Sure.
It's like being able to give yourself that space. And if you're going out on a date together, get ready separately. Like, don't get ready together and meet there. So there's like different little things that you can do to kind of trick this. And the other thing is talk about your sex life. Like, are you guys talking about it? Yeah. Are you guys talking about it? Does she know what you want in bed? Does he know what you want to do in bed? Like, what are the ways that you guys can spice things up on your own? Is it adding toys? Is it having a threesome? Is it, you can start to really explore these topics together.
And it's one of those things too, where I'd say, like, just from my personal experience, that when you're getting into a relationship, it's like you want to establish, and this comes with experience, right? Like, it sucks because when you're in college, and a lot of my listeners are, you don't know dick about relationships, and that's not your fault. That's an experience thing. So like, there's some of this stuff that you don't learn. You're just not supposed to know yet. Like some things, and this is how you can sort of skip some of the growing pains, right? Is by listening to podcasts like Whitney's. But if you establish this stuff early on in a relationship, you'll be great. The further you get in, the more difficult it gets to go back and sort of address what you just said. Like that baseline for like, what do you like in bed? What do I like in bed? What do you want me to do to you? What do you want to do to me? What, like, you need to talk, like, that's shit that like people don't talk about. That's so insane because it's so basic and just necessary to having any kind of understanding of each other. And so many of us just refuse to do it.
For sure. And know that a lot of the things that are going to come up and a lot of things that you want to talk about, you won't actually know until you practice it. So you're not going to know if you like something or don't like something until maybe you try it. And you can try it and say, I didn't really like that. We don't ever have to do that again. Or I liked this, but maybe a little bit to the left or to the right, and like, and you can people can try things on.
People think it's going to be like, I don't know, like if we start trying, it's like, then it's permanent. It's like, no, if you don't like it, just say you don't fucking like it and you'll never have to do it again if you're in a good relationship. So it's like, it just, there's no need for all that.
It's so true.
Overthink it. Here's another one. And because I get a lot of questions about breakups, about heartbreak, about how, like, recovering from a relationship that is no longer. Here's one. It's been almost a year since we broke up. How do I get over her?
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Breakups suck. I know no one's like, yay, I can't wait to break up with you. It's going to be really fun. And it's challenging for both people. Like the person who has to do the breakup, we have to understand that, yes, that is challenging, whoever initiated, and the person who's being broken up with, it's challenging. And first and foremost, my number one point about this is that it wasn't a failure. Like, everyone thinks that if your relationship doesn't last 90 years or till death, that it was all of a sudden a failure. But chances are that waste
of time, right?
Or I wasted 2 years of my life. Yeah. I wasted all this time with this person, blah, blah, blah. But really, you grew, you learned, you now know more about yourself and how you want to go through a relationship. Sometimes you have to go down the wrong track to figure out exactly where you want to be. And so first and foremost, it's not a failure. Like, it served its purpose for you, and now it's time to move on. And a couple of points on that is, be aware of catastrophic thinking. So like, we get into like these extreme thought processes, right? Like, we're never going to be friends again, and we can never talk again, and he hates me for life, and she does. And it's just like all of these extreme thinking. And we can also look back at the relationship with rose-colored glasses and say like, oh my God, everything was just so great and it was perfect, when really it was a shit show a lot of the time. But when we remember it, because it falls in line with our fears and insecurities triggered of being by yourself, it is in a completely different way.
God, that's fucked up.
It's just being real. Like, be real with yourself. Take a real hard look at what's going on. And another thing is like being okay with silence and space, which is really scary for people. Like, take the time to dive inward and see what's coming up for you. And if you're the type of person that just doesn't want to stay in contact with your ex, that's okay. Like, and I would recommend even saying that, like, hey, I'm going through my own process. I hope you just respect my time and space through this.
Oh yeah.
And
try
then,
to be nice. Like, don't be a prick about it. Like,
yeah, don't be a prick.
Try to put it that way.
Yeah. And one practice that I have almost all of my clients do when they're going through this, or if there's any sort of past relationship that's still on their mind, it's called a despacho, which is, and it sounds super simple, but I'm telling you, it's the most cathartic thing you could possibly do.
Okay.
You're writing a letter to this person, and you are writing anything and everything, any withholds, anything that came up, anything you wish you would, but you haven't, any grievances. You're writing it all out there, but you're not giving it to them. So this is completely divulging everything and just getting it off. And most people, what they tend to do is burn it. So being able to watch it and burn it, and like being able to get rid of some of that energy that's like stuck, and you just keep getting caught in the loop of your head, because our mind will create all kinds of stories and assumptions about what they're doing. Yeah. Like it'll just take you down a deep, dark rabbit hole of shit. And so like, write all of this out and get it out of your head, and you'll start to see that that's what starts to get all of this moving.
And can I say, for dudes, we hear shit like that, and I think typically the typical male response is that that's silly or stupid,
right?
Or why would I do that? Can I just say, as a guy who has gone through like a lot of therapy and shit, and for different reasons, like for mental health stuff, for anxiety, for depression, for addiction, for all kinds of shit that just went through a divorce. Yo, this stuff works and helps so much. The writing something down, it seems so fucking dumb. And even as a writer, like I was like, nah, I'm not going to journal. No, I'm not going to put my thoughts onto a paper. That's not something I'm going to do. I talk for a living. Like I'm good. Oh my God, writing something down and like, even, I mean, setting it on fire sounds tight as fuck. I wish I had done that. But even just like ripping it up and throwing it away, like, yeah. It'll make you, the getting it onto paper at all is huge, because it makes you process it. Right. And everything about recovery is about processing, giving yourself, you said, give yourself space and time. When my relationship sort of came to its end in October of 2019, I like self-quarantined, ironically, for like 3 fucking months. And it sounds really depressing. It wasn't. It was about giving myself the opportunity to really look at what just happened and have those rough moments where I sat there and had to be really honest with myself and think through years of stuff in a healthy and positive way, and try to, because my goal, like immediately, it was like, I knew this was going to be the worst thing I've ever gone through. I knew it was going to be brutal. And my question to myself is always like, if I'm going to go through this shitty fucking thing, how do I ensure it's worth it? And that I grow from it, and that it betters me, because you can even look at it, if you're a psycho competitive person, it's like, how do I win internally? Yeah. Like it doesn't even have to be against someone else. It's how do I win? And to win, you have to get better and grow from it. You have to come out with a positive. If it's a minus, you lose. That's the way I frame it up in my head sometimes. And if you come out
for sure. And exactly. And if you're not taking that time to really process all of these things, like these same issues that you had in your past relationship will show up in your next relationship, just with a different face.
And over and over.
Right. So what's the fastest way that you can get to healing? Like there's kind of two different routes, or multiple, but two main routes when you go through a breakup. It's like some people dive into the booze and the shitty food, and you're just fucking anything that walks and all of these things, right? Yeah. And that can work for a little while. Or think of like an athlete, or think of an athlete who has an injury. Like what do they do to recover from an injury? They put the right foods in their body. They take the time to heal it. They go see people who can help them heal it, and like really start to mend and get back to who they are, hopefully better than they were before. And so kind of go with that mindset. Like what's the fastest way for me to get to healing? If it's writing my feelings on a piece of paper, why not do it?
I don't know. Eventually I did. And it was like one of the best things I ever did. So I'm telling you, if you're listening and you're like, meh, do it. Here's the next question. How do you deal with a partner who is super type A, very goal oriented, stringent schedule, making long-term plans for life, when that isn't really your style and you're more of a play it as it comes person?
I mean, this could either be really good for both of you guys, to where you can, the way that you go through your relationship can teach him or her, and vice versa. Maybe it'll help them relax being so, planned out. Maybe it'll help you be more organized. And so if you can come at it with that with that sense of thought and being able to like, how can we make this work? I think it could benefit both of you guys. Now, if it's to the extreme to where one person is just not willing to budge whatsoever, there may be just a fundamental difference between you guys. And so it's up to you to see like, am I really happy and thriving in this relationship? And you're not going to completely change who that person is. Like they say a lot of the times when you meet somebody, how they are fundamentally, you'll know after 2 weeks. And so you can do what you want as much as you can, but at the same time, that person is who they are. And if that's where they're the happiest, and that's where they're the happiest.
Yeah, you used a word that fundamental. It's like those big fundamental differences. Like you can have a type A and a type B, but you have to have that understanding between each other. You have to acknowledge those things and accept them about each other. Mm-hmm. If it's an issue, you're just two different types of people. It's clearly not going to work long term. If it's not an issue because you're able to make it work, like you said, it could be a huge benefit. It's just whether or not people are willing to work together. And that's another aspect of it that really became like, when I was looking at my marriage, or when I look at my past relationships sometimes, just to kind of, now that I have more knowledge and I hope wisdom, to frame them up too and see like what happened there. And it's like, you can look at it like a team almost too.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Chemistry has to work between teammates, and they have to work together or you will not win. And it's stupid to have sports analogies with relationships, but it works sometimes, and it's fun.
It makes sense. I mean, when I talk about couples, particularly when it comes to open relationships, but really any relationship, is if you guys are teammates, like see each other as teammates. Like, how can I help you? How can you help me? Like, we're on the same team, right?
Yes, and that's a problem for some people. Next question. This is great. I don't feel like I have great sex. Were there any major breakthroughs that led you to feeling more free in bed?
So, I mean, I wish I could talk to this person to get a little bit more information, but it sounds like it's maybe a mindset thing. There's a couple of different things. I would like understand what is it about your sex that you don't like? Where do you want to go? How do you want to show up sexually within your relationship? Like, what type of sex do you want to be having? There's this guy who I've had on my playlist called Kenneth Play, and you can go and you can sign up for his course. And basically what it is, it takes you through penetration, through cunnilingus, through fingering, through like any of it.
What do you mean?
And he actually, so you buy his course and he actually does it to a woman on the course. It's kind of like porn, but educational. He's
like you're watching him do this?
You're watching it. Yes.
It's educational porn.
It's educational porn, 100%, which by the way, let me tell all the men out there that the porn that you are watching and getting your moves from is fucking fake. Okay. Like, let's get serious here.
I think we know that at this point. I hope.
Okay. You would be surprised.
Let me rephrase. By 32, you know that. And I'm 32. Some of y'all that are listening, that you're 18, you don't know that yet. You'll figure it out.
It's a performance. It's like going to watch a play, and it's fun and a great, don't get me wrong, I love porn.
Let's just know one more sports analogy. Let me give one more. I promise. I'll stop after this. I promise. You watch LeBron James on a basketball court go dunk, right? You don't then go out to your driveway and try to perform that dunk because you're not LeBron James.
Right.
There you go.
These guys are like, yeah, but you don't know me in the bedroom, boo.
But we do.
Yeah. So yeah, you can go and check it out, and he'll give you all the techniques, the strategies. And like, if you are interested in learning how to be a better lover, read books, watch Kenneth Play, ask people. We think that we're born and we come into this world just being like sex gods and sex goddesses. And that's not the case. You got to learn how to have sex, just like you have to learn how to drive a car.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's like, for guys, I think a lot of the time what it is it's that place that they get to where they're saying they don't feel like they're having good sex anymore. It's because it's become repetitive, and it comes back to that same shit that we just sort of covered in the first few questions, where it's like, well, then talk about it. It's okay to tell your girlfriend or your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or whatever that, hey, I just kind of noticed, I think our sex is getting a little stale, and I don't think that's your fault. Just First off, be very clear about that part. People are sensitive.
Yeah.
And then try to get into it. Because you could, like, again, same team, solve it together. It's your sex, not just one of you. It's both of y'all. So, like, fix it for each other.
It's co-created, right? The entire relationship is co-created. So if you feel like you're not having the best sex that you can have, and you're not saying anything, you are making your sex life worse. It's not your other partner. It's completely co-created and between both of you guys.
And there's that like whatever it's, I guess it's like guilt by non-action. People never, like, you got to accept that not doing anything is detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just as much to blame as the person who you're finding fault with. You can't just look across the aisle and say you have a problem with what's going on and then not try to help fix it, or you are also the problem.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. Next question. Where, and this is so important because I struggled with this forever, from like 18 to 32. Where do you look for people to date? Like, actively look for someone to be more than friends with, other than at bars?
Yeah. So this is a very big question for a lot of people. And it's kind of simple though, but it's doing things that you wouldn't normally do. Like, where would you go? Who are the people that you would hang out? Do some things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone. Is it going to a new gym? Is it going to like a cooking class? Is it going to friends that you don't normally hang out with? Like, go to different places that aren't just the bars on 6th Street. I live on 6th Street, so I'm just looking at 6th Street. Because then you'll end up seeing like the same people over and over and over again. There's also, we use technology. I know a lot of people don't want to use dating apps, but why not use the dating app and just put yourself out there?
We got a lot of questions about dating apps, and I honestly didn't add any of them because I was like, I'm not a dating app. I never did dating apps before I got married. I was in that relationship for like 8-9 years or something. So I like just became single again, and I haven't fucked with it yet because I'm not there, and I don't know if I plan to. But the point is this: one of the questions we got was like, how do you feel about dating apps in general? Because there is that, like, there's a stigma to it. Where I think I don't know, it feels like it's about 50-50. Like, most 50% of people are like, yeah, dating apps are tight, I love using them. And 50% are like, you never have any success on there. It's a nightmare, fucking never going back. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So there's that catastrophic thinking and extreme thinking. Like, people do meet a lot of people on dating apps. I talk to tons of have met their partners on dating apps. It's just a technology to use. If you want to use that technology, use it. If you don't use it.
It doesn't have to be so dramatic.
It's something right at your fingertips. You can get on, you can try it, and if you don't like it, delete the app. It's super simple.
All right, here's another question. How can I tell my husband I'm upset with something he's done without making him feel terrible? I just took it straight from her, all right? I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah. I'm like, I wonder what it was. Yes. So one, here we go. It's the communication, right? Why are you afraid to bring something up to him? Is it the way that he responds to emotionally heightened situations? I'm not sure. Maybe he can't really communicate. Maybe he gets angry. If you are communicating with somebody who gets angry and they get loud, a lot of the times that is them saying, see me, hear my pain. This is the only way I know how to get you to see my pain, unfortunately. But just so you have that awareness, and use I sentences. You know, when this happened, I felt unloved. When this happened, I felt like you were attracted to somebody else. It made me feel X, Y, and Z, instead of being like, when you did this, you made me feel this way. And it's just taking responsibility for your own emotions in it. And if you come with the I sentences, I unfortunately felt this way, then it takes some of the sting out of it. So maybe they can receive what you're saying a little bit easier.
Yeah. If you don't, because I think often people, when we get into these conversations with one another in relationships, we tend to attach a lot of weight to things. Mm-hmm. And we tend to make it, hey, you fucked up and you fucking hurt me by doing this thing. Yeah. Now explain yourself, apologize, and fix it. And rather than doing it that way, it's really like, because again, it comes back to the same team thing. Ask yourself, what are you accomplishing by going about it that way? Mm-hmm. Nothing. You're just making the other person feel bad, providing them with some shame, and probably getting them to resent you a little bit.
Yep.
That's not a good thing long term. So how do you do it in a way that's going to accomplish what you want, which is just to be heard and have them understand how they made you feel. So with your person, if they it's however they react, and for some people it's that they tend to get very upset, combative, defensive, feel like they're being attacked, then you sort of have to work that, right? You have to work the angles. Like you have to find the ways for each individual person you are in a relationship with, how it, just like with an employee, if you run a company and you have a whole bunch of employees, each one of them has a different style of communication that will work with them. You don't manage each one the same way. So it's kind of like in asking this question with us not knowing more details about them, that's the best I can say.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And like in any relationship, you're going to have arguments. That's just the case. Like, that's just going to happen. So it's just how you argue is really, really important. One thing that I like to do for my clients is like the intention of this conversation. What's the intention of it? Is it to prove the other person right or prove them wrong, whatever it is? But it's like the intention should be for truth. We want to get down to whatever the truth is. We want to get down to some clarity between us two. And then how can we grow from this?
Right. A couple more. This was from Chris on Instagram. He doesn't need to be anonymous. Is it inherently bad to move quickly in a relationship? And I'll reframe this in another way too. Like, because I think this has been something that in the past that I have personally struggled with. Some people are geared this way, right? Where when we get into relationships, we tend to just throw ourselves into them, and that can be bad, and it can so I guess your take. He's asking for yours, not mine.
No, I think what you're saying is great. And this is, again, a lot of people go through this same thing. And so if you are just out of a relationship, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a right time, right? It's how fast should we move? How slow should we move? It's kind of up to, the two people in the relationship. But if you're moving into another relationship quickly after your last one, just be aware, just try to be aware, understand why am I getting into this relationship right now? If you are in a relationship or you just started a relationship to where it's just big explosion, we're completely obsessed with each other, we're constantly talking, it's all of these things. Yes, there may be a really strong connection there, but start to ask yourself, what aspects of myself is this person bringing out in me? Because that's what that's kind of really what gives you the insight and the excitement, because they are making you feel a certain way that you haven't felt before. Not that it isn't love, not that it won't last for a long time. It definitely has the potential to do that.
Sure.
But if you can just start to be really aware of why you do the things that you do, or why you call in or be in a relationship with the people that you do, that's the only way that you're going to have healthy relationships moving forward. And really, that doesn't matter if it's in 2 months, 3 months, whatever.
It's just about having that understanding. Yeah.
It's about having that understanding. Yeah.
It's one of the things that, over the course of years and years of having gone through therapy and just been through and read a lot about relationships and shit, there's a term called love bombing, where people get into relationships, and you do have to be, I'll say about this, moving quickly in relationships, you got to be careful about, I would just frame it up this way. The stronger your connection is up front, the more likely you are to slip into a place where you move too quickly and maybe don't do some of the establishing and foundational stuff you should do to maintain and build a strong relationship. So you got to be careful. And that's like, so if you recognize that the person you found, or that this new person and you are incredibly connected, like it's just one of those things where you're like, everything's on fire, you know how it is, or hopefully you know how it is. Hopefully everybody gets at least one of these at some point. You got to be careful with that shit. You got to really nourish it at the front, because if you let yourself just sort of fall into like the straight lust of it and not focus on any of the building of the important relationship shit, you'll be fucked. But also on the love bomb side, you got to be very careful, because for a lot of people, they're masking shit and hiding other features by love bombing the tits out of you with If you meet a guy and it's, oh my God, I'm so in love with you, I can't wait to marry you tomorrow. Like, I mean, we're gonna have the best life together. We're gonna have fucking kids. We're gonna have a house. If that's like happening in week 2, you gotta really take a step back and ask yourself, what the fuck,
Right?
Because in some cases it's somebody masking all of these negative things that you're gonna discover when it's way too late.
Yeah. And also, what's the rush, right? If you guys are meant together, really, what's the rush? Take your time
chill out, bro.
get to know each other. There's a term called limerence, which is basically new relationship energy. But it's shown that when you get into a relationship like this, there's chemicals released into your brain like dopamine and serotonin that make you really excited about this relationship.
Happy.
Right. So it feels really fucking awesome. And then you're like, yay, let's get married. And then 1 year from now, you're like, holy hell, who is this person that I'm living with?
Yeah, I think that happens. Like, it's funny. The older you get, the more you understand why the divorce rate is as high as it is.
Yeah.
Because that's like, I'd say like 30% of relationships, people are just like, this is dope, let's get married. Then 2 years later, they're like, oh, fuck. What? What the fuck were we thinking?
Who are you?
Yeah, Jesus Christ, it's a totally different person. Okay, we got 2 more questions quickly, and then we'll let you go on. Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time.
Of course.
Because this is one of my favorites. I couldn't leave it out. Why do some people do things like urinate on each other during coitus?
Because they're into it. I think because they're just into it. I mean, some people like that. Some people don't. It's like fantasies and all of that. There's really, I just really think people like it or you don't. And I mean,
why pee?
Because it's taboo, probably. God, a lot of people like to do things in bed or anything, really. They like to have sex outside. Why? Because it's kind of taboo. Why do you want to be peed on? Why do you want a golden shower?
We talk about furries sometimes, the furry community, just because it's fascinating.
Yeah.
You know what furries are, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know why. We just talk about weird
I was like, okay, sometimes. Where are we going?
Look, that was it. There was nothing else to talk about. We went through furries at one point. For some reason, at one point, we were talking about feet a lot, feet people. And then for some reason now we've got questions about peeing on each other. Here's your last question, and this one's serious, I promise. It's if you could only give, and it's also like good luck. If you could only give one piece of advice, you get one for maintaining a strong relationship, what would it be? And I'm just gonna take a stab at it. It's gonna be communication related.
Yeah, 100%. It's communication. Like really learn how to communicate your wants and needs and trust in your truth. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, also know that how they communicate, really curious about how they can communicate, how they can receive your feelings, because we all love differently. We all want things a little bit differently. We all have a different attachment styles. And so if you can understand how they can receive you and what you have to say, and then you feel comfortable expressing what you want, will be so much growth within your relationship. The more that you don't talk about things, the bigger the wedge gets and resentment builds, and resentment is the monster that eats love. So do what you can to get rid of resentment. And most of the time, almost all the time, it's communicating.
Fuck, that was good. Whitney, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful Monday. Can you tell us once more where we can follow you on social media, where we can hear your lovely voice elsewhere, please?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social media at Wit in Love, WHIT, the letter N, LOVE, and that's same with Twitter. And then I have a podcast called True Sex and Wild Love, and that comes out every Thursday. And it's all about love, sex, and relationships. We bring on different guests. We've had porn stars on there. We have authors. We have doctors. We have everything.
And who's your co-host again? What's her name? I always forget.
Yeah, my co-host is Dr. Wednesday Martin, and she wrote the book Untrue, among some other ones, but Untrue is about female sexuality and female infidelity. And it's one book that I think a lot of guys should also read too, so you can understand kind of what's going on with the female brain and female sexuality.
Right on. Okay, well, hey, thank you again, Miss Whitney Miller, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Go low, baby.